The paper felt heavier than it should, have like its weight wasn't from ink and thin fibers, but from the truth waiting inside it. My hands shook as I smoothed the creases, my throat tightening as each line came into focus. Names, numbers, dates, and at the top, highlighted in thick black marker, financial transfers linked to J. Roberts. My breath caught. No, it couldn't mean, but it did. Because beneath that heading was a name I never expected to see. Daniel, my son. My only child. The one who cried in my arms the night he discovered his wife with his own father. The boy I raised alone after heartbreak. The man who carried guilt he didn't deserve. The only family I had left. His name was tied to payments made from an account connected to Preston Ward. I stared at it, unable to make sense of anything. 3 transfers. Small amounts at first. Then a large one. All within the last 6 months. 6 months. Right around the time Allison filed for divorce. Right around the time the fight began over my bakery contract. Right around the time Preston came into the picture. A wave of nausea rolled through me. No, I whispered. No, my baby wouldn't. But the paper didn't lie. Marcus had circled each transfer in red ink, adding a handwritten note at the bottom. Ask him why. But brace yourself. My legs felt weak, and I lowered myself onto the chair before I fell. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not for this. Not for something I didn't fully understand. The bell over the door chimed again. I swallowed hard, quickly refolding the paper and sliding it under the counter. I wiped my eyes and stood up straight. Thomas walked in, and the moment he saw my face, he knew something was wrong. What happened? He asked, stepping closer. I shook my head, my voice barely a whisper. Someone came by. He tensed. Who? A man named Marcus Hale. The name alone made Thomas curse under his breath. He's worse than Preston in many ways. Juliet, you cannot trust. He brought this, slid the paper toward him. Thomas unfolded it, his expression darkening with each passing second. His jaw tightened. His brows furrowed. His eyes hardened. Finally, he lowered the paper slowly. Juliet, he whispered. Do you know what this means? I clenched the counter until my knuckles ached. No, I said. I want you to tell me. Because my heart is telling me something I refuse to believe. Thomas hesitated. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he didn't want to say it. This isn't just betrayal, he said softly. This is coordination. Someone close to you has been feeding information to Preston. The kind of information only family would have. My stomach twisted painfully. You think Daniel is working with them? No, Thomas said quickly. Not like that. Not willingly. He pointed at the first transfer. These amounts. They look like medical payments. Debt relief. Loan assistance. I blinked. Daniel doesn't owe medical debt. Thomas nodded slowly. Not now, but maybe he did before. Or maybe he took help from someone who didn't explain where the money came from. I shook my head violently. He wouldn't take help from strangers. He isn't stupid, but what if he didn't know it came from them? Thomas said. What if someone close to Allison's family offered him help? Pretending it was from a friend. Or from a program. Or through the fire department. My heart twisted painfully. Because that was exactly the kind of man my son was. Proud on the outside. Hurting on the inside. Always trying to protect everyone but himself. And the big payment? I whispered. Thomas exhaled slowly. That one. That worries me. I stared at the number, again large enough to save a house, pay a hospital bill, wipe a slate clean. What could he possibly need that for? I asked. Thomas looked at me for a long moment. Then he said what I secretly feared. Juliet, something is going on with him. Something he hasn't told you. And the Harlows know it. A deep ache pressed into my chest. My son was in trouble. And someone had used that trouble to get close to him. To get information out of him. To weaponize him. I closed my eyes. I need to talk to him, I whispered. Now Thomas reached out gently. Juliet, if Daniel is caught in this web, rushing at him with accusations, could push him deeper into their hands. "I don't care," I said, tears finally spilling. "He's my son." The bell chimed again. Thomas and I turned toward the door and froze. Daniel stood there, disheveled, eyes red, face pale. And behind him, bruises across his jaw. My heart dropped. "Daniel," I breathed. He looked at me, his voice breaking. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you months ago." Don't miss the next part. Daniel finally reveals the truth behind the payments and why someone has been threatening him in the shadows. Daniel took a step inside the bakery, and for the first time since he was a child, I saw fear in his eyes, not the kind that comes from danger outside, but the kind that comes from secrets eating someone alive on the inside. He looked exhausted. His shoulders slumped. His hands trembled as he closed the door behind him. When the latch clicked, he flinched. I felt my heart break. "Daniel," I whispered, rushing toward him. "What happened to your face?" He shook his head, eyes down. "Mom, please, just let me explain." Thomas stood quietly near the counter, watching every detail with the sharpness of a man trained to notice danger before it arrived. I could tell he wanted to intervene, but he respected that this moment belonged to us. Daniel sank onto a chair, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. He stayed like that for a long, agonizing moment, breathing hard, trying to steady himself. Finally, he spoke. "I messed up, Mom, and I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want you to worry." A tear slipped down my cheek. "Baby, you're all I worry about." He winced either from the bruise or the guilt. "I got into trouble a while back," he said. "After everything with Allison, I wasn't okay. I tried to handle it. Work, therapy, but it wasn't enough." His voice cracked. "I'm not as strong as you think I am." I reached for his hand gently. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Daniel." He pulled his hand back, not out of anger, but shame. "That loan I took from the union program," he swallowed hard. "It wasn't from the union. It wasn't from the department. It wasn't from anyone official." His words hit me like cold water. He looked up, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It was from a man who said he could help me keep the townhouse after the divorce. He said he admired firefighters. Said he wanted to help good people get back on their feet." Thomas muttered under his breath, "That sounds like one of Preston's proxies." Daniel nodded miserably. "I didn't know who he was at first, I swear. But once I signed, once I took the help, I couldn't get away." He rubbed his face with both hands, breathing fast. "They kept coming back, asking questions about you, about the bakery, about your finances. At first it seemed harmless, just casual conversation." His voice dropped. "But then they started threatening me." The room fell silent. "Threatening my son, my baby," Nell continued, voice low and shaking. "They showed up at my station once, followed me home, called me at night. They said if I didn't tell them what they wanted to know, they'd make sure I lost everything." He pointed to the bruise on his jaw. "This wasn't an accident." My heart twisted with rage and terror. "Daniel, why didn't you come to me?" He laughed weakly through tears. "Because I knew what you'd do. You'd fight. And people like them don't let strong women fight. They destroy them." He looked at me, eyes shining with guilt. "And they told me if you didn't cooperate with Preston's lawyer, they'd make sure something happened to you." My breath caught. "So you kept quiet to protect me," I whispered. He nodded miserably. And because I was scared, Thomas stepped forward gently. "Daniel, did Preston know you were close to breaking?" "Yes." Daniel wiped his eyes. "That's why they sent someone to talk to me last night, to remind me of what I owed." Thomas stiffened. "Someone who—" Daniel's lips trembled. "His name was Marcus." I blinked. Thomas froze, and everything inside me went cold. "Marcus Hale was threatening you?" Thomas asked sharply. Daniel nodded. "He said if I didn't give him the rest of the documents he wanted, he'd come after Mom. That's why I came here. I had to warn her. The puzzle pieces clicked so violently it made my chest ache. Marcus didn't help me out of kindness. He wasn't delivering warnings. He wasn't acting on his own. He had come here to see if his intimidation was working. The paper he left wasn't a gift. It was leverage. And now I finally understood why he told me. Someone I loved betrayed me. He wanted to destroy me from the inside first. I placed both hands on Daniel's cheeks gently, ignoring the bruise. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "You didn't betray me. They manipulated you. They trapped you. But you came here. You told me the truth. That's what matters." Daniel broke down, laying his head against my shoulder like he used to as a child. Thomas paced the bakery, gripping his jaw so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. "This changes everything," he said darkly. "They're closer than I thought. And if Marcus is involved personally," he turned to us, eyes grave, "that means phase 2 wasn't the break-in." Swallowed. "Then what was it?" Thomas hesitated, then said something that made my knees weaken. "Phase 2 was forcing Daniel into a corner." He pointed at the door. "Phase 3 is coming for you. Don't miss the next part. Because phase 3 will hit Juliet where it hurts most in an old enemy she thought she'd never see again, steps out of the dark." The police stayed for over an hour, taking statements, dusting for fingerprints, asking questions I barely had the strength to answer. But even after they left, the bakery felt different. Not like a place of warmth and sugar and childhood memories, but like a battlefield. One where the enemy had already crossed the line. I swept the broken glass slowly, my hands trembling as I pushed the shards into the dustpan. Thomas stood by the back door, arms crossed, thinking hard. The streetlight behind him cast a narrow glow across his face, sharpening the worry lines in his forehead. "Juliet," he said finally, "they weren't here to steal." "I know," I whispered. "They weren't looking for money or equipment. They were looking for something upstairs. Something or someone." I swallowed hard. "Me," he nodded. "They wanted to scare you. Or grab something that could help Allison's case." I sat heavily on a chair, my knees weak. But why? Preston already threatened me. Why break in? Thomas hesitated before answering. "Because you didn't back down. People like Preston expect obedience the moment they threaten it. When they don't get it." He let the sentence finish itself. "They escalate." I stared at the opposite wall, where a framed picture of Daniel and me hung laughing, covered in flour, holding a tray of burnt cookies from a day when we'd tried a new recipe and failed spectacularly. For a moment, I wished life could be that simple again. Thomas walked over and sat across from me. Lowering his voice, "I started digging into Preston after you called me. His records aren't clean. There's money where there shouldn't be money. Contracts that disappear. Companies that fold right after he invests in them." "And why, Allison?" I asked. "Why is she worth all this trouble to him?" That's the part that doesn't. "Line up." He pulled out a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket. "I found something." He slid it across the table. It was a photograph. Old, grainy, definitely taken years ago in it. Allison's mother, Tanaya, stood beside a man. Not Preston. Another man. Sharp jawline. Deep-set eyes. The kind of man who controlled a room even while standing still. And behind them, a younger Preston Ward. Laughing, drinking, comfortable, like family. My breath hitched. "Who is that man next to her?" Thomas leaned back, voice low. "That's Randall Harlow." My stomach dropped. The brother of James Harlow, Allison's other uncle. A man who disappeared 30 years ago after accusations of embezzlement. Political blackmail. It's been one suspicious death. A man the police never found. Man tied to everything dark and corrupt in 2 states. I stared at the photo, the pieces clicking together like a nightmare puzzle. So Allison's family and Preston. "They go way back," Thomas said. "Preston's rise to wealth. It didn't happen alone. The Harlows helped him, protected him, built him. My voice trembled. So now he's returning the favor. Yes, Thomas said. By helping Allison, by going after you? I shook my head slowly. But I'm just a baker. Why am I such a threat? Thomas leaned forward. You're not a threat to Allison. You're a threat to what she's trying to do. The Harlows don't care about her heartbreak. They care about money, land, and leverage. He pointed at the floor beneath our feet. This bakery sits on prime commercial land. Your chain contracts? Worth millions over 10 years. If Preston can take the bakery from you win by lawsuit, he can flip this territory into a development. Project Isley. My hands slowly fell from the table. It wasn't about Allison. It never was. She was just a pawn, a weak one, a desperate one, but useful to bigger players. My bakery wasn't just a bakery, it was currency, and Preston Ward wanted it in his pocket. Thomas's voice broke the silence, and Juliet. The break-in tonight wasn't the end. I looked up sharply. What do you mean? There were 2 people. Only one came inside. The other was watching the alley. When I chased the intruder, the second one made a call. I heard just enough to know this isn't over. My heart pounded painfully. What did he say? Thomas hesitated. Dodd then spoke. He said, she's alone, but not for long. Move to phase 2. A chill rolled up my spine so hard it made me grip the edge of the table. Phase 2, I whispered. Thomas stood locking the front door again, checking every bolt like a soldier preparing for war. We need to be prepared, he said. For what? I asked. His eyes met mine with a seriousness I had never seen in him before. For them trying again. Don't miss the next part. Because phase 2 will introduce someone from Juliet's past she never expected to see again. And he isn't on her side. Asterisk, the next morning came far too quickly. I hadn't slept more than an hour. Every sound startled every passing car, every creak in the walls, every gust of wind against the window. Fear had a way of slipping under the skin, making itself at home, whispering lies until your heartbeat stayed too loud to ignore. By sunrise, my eyes burned from exhaustion. But the bakery had to open. Fear or not, business didn't stop. Bills didn't stop. Life didn't stop. I moved through the kitchen on autopilot, measuring flour, cracking eggs, mixing dough. My mind still replaying Thomas's words. Phase 2? If breaking in was phase 1, what came next? At 7 a.m. sharp, the bell above the bakery door chimed. The first customer of the day. I forced a smile onto my face, wiped my hands, and stepped toward the counter. Then I froze. It wasn't a customer. It was a man. Tall, lean, with a shaved head and a leather jacket that looked expensive. He carried no bag, no phone, no wallet in sight. His hands were empty, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. The kind of eyes that scanned every exit before a person even spoke. The kind of eyes that meant trouble. He gave me a slow smile. Juliet Roberts. It wasn't a question. My throat tightened. Can I help you? He stepped closer, hands in his pockets, tone casual in a way that felt dangerous. My name is Marcus Hale. I think we know some of the same people. I swallowed. Do we? Oh, definitely. His smile widened, cold and mocking. I'm an old friend of Preston Ward. My fingers curled toward the counter behind me. If he sent you here, he didn't send me. Marcus raised a hand. Relax. I'm here on my own. That didn't make me feel better. Not even a little. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Word travels fast in our world. I heard about the break-in incident last night. Figured I should check in on you. He said break-in, the way someone else might say gala or wedding, completely unbothered. Check in on me, I echoed. He nodded. Preston? Well, he plays too rough when he wants something. And right now, you're sitting on something he wants real bad. My bakery isn't for sale, I snapped. Oh, I know, Marcus said smoothly. That's the problem. I clenched my jaw. Why are you here? He looked around the bakery, slowly, almost admiringly. "You know," he said, tapping a display case, "I used to come here as a kid. Best cinnamon rolls in the county. You never knew who I was, but my mama loved this place." I blinked. He kept talking, his voice softer now. "This bakery, its history, community. People grew up on your recipes. Folks proposed in that booth." He pointed toward the corner. "Had first dates over your cheesecake. Celebrated birthdays with your chocolate pie." His eyes locked onto mine. "Preston doesn't care about any of that." "But I do." A strange twist of hope rose in my chest, but before it grew, Marcus crushed it. "I'm not here to protect you," he said plainly. "Let's make that clear. I'm here because I owe someone from my past a favor." He reached into his jacket slowly. I stiffened, but he only pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He set it on the counter between us. "What is that?" I asked. "Information," he said, "about why Preston wants this bakery. The real reason." I stared at him, confused. "Why are you giving this to me?" Marcus glanced toward the window, scanning the street like he expected someone to be watching. Then he said it because Preston Ward isn't helping Allison out of kindness. He's helping her because of her uncle. Yes? But that's not the whole story. Then what is? I whispered. Marcus stepped back, keeping his voice low. "Someone from your past." He paused. "Someone you trusted. Someone you cared for." My stomach twisted. "Has been feeding Preston information for months." Stared at him, shock flooding every nerve. "Who?" I demanded. Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he tapped the paper on the counter. "It's all in there." But Juliet listened carefully. His expression hardened. All traces of softness gone. "Once you read this, you won't be able to go back to the way things were." A chill crawled up my neck. "What do you mean?" He stepped toward the door, hand on the knob. "Your enemy isn't just outside your circle." He looked over his shoulder. "He's inside it." Then he walked out, leaving the bakery silent except for the faint rustle of that single folded paper on my counter. My hand trembled as I reached for it. I unfolded it slowly, and what I saw inside made my knees weaken, made my heart break, made me sit down before I collapsed. Because the person secretly helping Preston destroy everything I owned was someone I loved. Don't miss the next part, where Juliet confronts the betrayal inside her own circle and learns just how deep the deception goes. The moment Preston Ward walked away from my door, an eerie stillness settled over my kitchen. Heavy, suffocating. I had lived through betrayal, humiliation, divorce, heartbreak. But this was different. This wasn't emotional pain. This was danger. Real danger. I stood up slowly, pressing my hand against the counter to steady myself. I wasn't a woman who scared easily. 40 years of marriage had taught me how to swallow storms without flinching. But something about Preston's voice, smooth, controlled, dripping with unspoken threats, made my bones feel cold. I took a long breath and forced myself into motion. Keeping still when you're frightened only makes fear grow bigger. So I opened cabinets, checked locks, and made sure every window was shut tight. Not because I believed a man like Preston would break in himself, but because men like him didn't get their hands dirty. They had people. People who did dirty work with a smile. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the floorboards felt like footsteps. Every passing car made me sit upright. I kept replaying Preston's words. Accidents happen. I have no control over the enthusiasm of certain people. He was warning me without saying it directly. If I didn't cooperate, something would happen. Something ugly. By sunrise, I decided I needed someone who wasn't afraid of men like Preston. Someone who knew how these wealthy snakes operated. And only one name came to mind. Thomas, the private investigator who helped expose Julian and Allison. I called him as I opened the bakery. I didn't expect him to answer so early, but he picked up on the first ring. "Mrs. Roberts." He said, voice alert. "Are you all right?" "No," I whispered. "I need to see you." He arrived faster than I expected, still in his old denim jacket, hair slightly messy, like he'd rushed out the door. The moment he stepped into the bakery and saw my face, he locked the door behind him. What happened? I handed him Vanessa's business card and the envelope Preston had tried to give me. His eyes scanned them, pupils narrowing. "You met him?" he asked quietly. "Last night." He didn't speak for a moment. His jaw clenched and he rubbed the side of his face. "Preston Ward," he muttered. I knew that name sounded familiar. "You know him?" I pressed. Thomas nodded slowly. "Enough to know he isn't someone you deal with alone." "Why is a man like him helping someone like Allison?" "That's the part that worries me," he replied. "He doesn't take cases out of kindness. He invests in people, usually because there's something in it for him." I shook my head. "She doesn't have anything to offer him." Thomas gave me a long, heavy look. "Everyone has something to offer a man like Preston. Money, leverage, secrets, influence, and sometimes family ties." His voice dropped low. "And Allison's family isn't clean, Mrs. Roberts." A chill slid down my spine. "What do you mean?" "Her uncle on her mother's side is James Harlow." The name made my heart skip. James Harlow. A man connected to half the corruption scandals in Texas. A man rumored to make people disappear if they cost him money. A man with friends in high places and enemies buried in deep places. I felt the room tilt. Thomas leaned closer, voice firm but gentle. "You're not just dealing with Allison anymore. You're dealing with the people behind her. And they have bigger motives than revenge." I gripped the counter. "What motives?" He sighed. "Your bakery chain. Your contracts. Your land. Preston doesn't want your apology. He wants your business." My stomach dropped. Allison had tried to take my bakery once. Now with Preston and her powerful family behind her, they were trying again, this time legally, forcefully, and with a threat attached. Thomas placed a hand on the counter, leaning in. "Juliet, this is going to get worse before it gets better." I stared at him, trembling, but not from fear. From anger. "They want to take everything I built," I whispered. Thomas nodded. "And they won't stop." But he added something else, something I clung to like a lifeline. "You're not fighting this alone." For the first time since Preston knocked on my door, I could breathe again. Just a little. Don't miss the next part. The night something or someone tries to break into Juliet's bakery. And she discovers Preston's threats were only the beginning. The wind that night felt wrong. It whistled through the alley behind my bakery like a warning, low, sharp, restless. I stood at the sink washing trays, trying to steady my mind. Trying not to think about Preston's cold smile. Vanessa's heels clicking across my tile floor. Or the name James Harlow echoing in my memory like a gunshot. Thomas had been right. This wasn't personal drama anymore. This was business, power, money. And people like that didn't lose quietly. Around midnight, I finally closed up shop. I swept the floors, wiped the counters, and checked every lock twice. Then I checked the windows. Then the back door again. I hated how jumpy I'd become, how my hands shook even when I was doing simple things. But before heading upstairs, I walked to the oven and touched its warm metal surface. 40 years of work. 40 years of sweat, pain, triumph, sacrifice. 40 years of choosing myself even when Julian tried to convince me I wasn't enough. They weren't taking this from me. Not Preston. Not Vanessa. Not Allison. Not any of them. I climbed the stairs slowly, my joints stiff after a long day. I was halfway up when I heard it. A click. Not loud. Not sharp. Soft, careful, like someone trying not to be noticed. I froze. My spine stiffened instantly, and my breath turned shallow. The sound came again near the back door. Thomas's warning flashed through my mind. You're not dealing with Allison anymore. You're dealing with the people behind her. I stepped backward down the stairs as silently as I could and grabbed the cast iron skillet I had left on the counter. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my grip was steady. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost, staying low, staying quiet. The bakery was dark except for the dim street light leaking through the front windows. Then I heard the back doorknob jiggle. Someone was outside. trying to open it slowly, deliberately. I crouched behind the counter, skillet raised, my breath shaking. The doorknob twisted again, this time harder. Then came the metallic scrape of tools. Someone was picking the lock. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. I typed one word to Thomas. Now. He didn't respond, but I knew he'd come. The back door creaked. Just slightly. Then a whisper of cold air slipped inside. A silhouette eased into the bakery, a tall figure, broad shoulders, wearing a dark hood. He moved like someone who'd done this before. Someone who wasn't afraid of consequences. Someone who knew he wouldn't be caught. He scanned the room, eyes adjusting. I held my breath. He stepped closer, moving between the shelves. And then he muttered something under his breath. Check the upstairs. Make it quick. My blood froze. There was someone with him. My phone buzzed. A message from Thomas. Outside. Don't move. At that exact moment, the bakery door exploded open. Thomas charged inside with a flashlight in one hand and something heavier in the other. The intruder spun, startled, and bolted toward the back exit. But Thomas was faster. The two men collided with a crash of metal trays and broken glass. They wrestled on the floor, grunting, curses filling the air. I ran behind the counter, gripping the skillet tightly, ready to swing if the stranger broke free. Thomas shouted, "Call 911." I dialed instantly, voice shaking as I spoke. But before help could arrive, the intruder managed to shove Thomas hard and sprint out the back door into the alley. Thomas ran after him, but the man vanished into the shadows like smoke. The alley fell silent. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Thomas came back inside, breathing hard, sweat running down his brow. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded, though my whole body trembled. Who was he? Thomas shook his head. Not a random thief. That was a professional. A sick feeling crawled up my spine. "Do you think Preston sent him?" Thomas didn't answer right away. He looked toward the back door now, hanging crooked on its hinges. Finally, he said with a grave tone, "I think this was a message." I stared at the shattered glass on the bakery floor. A message. A reminder. A warning. That Preston Ward could reach me any time he wanted. And this time, he wasn't hiding behind lawyers. Don't miss the next part. Because Juliet is about to learn W.H.Y. Preston is so invested in destroying her. And the truth is more twisted than she ever imagined. I thought the world would finally calm down after the fire, the hospital scandal, and the public humiliation of Julian and Allison. For a moment, I believed the storm had passed. But storms don't end just because the clouds move. Sometimes they settle deep in the soil, waiting for the right moment to rise again. Asterisk, I share new life stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you love it. If you keep listening till the end, it had been 3 months since that day 3 long months of whispering neighbors. Reporters lurking around corners, and people pretending to buy bread just to catch a glimpse of the woman who burned her house on purpose. I didn't mind. Let them talk. I had lived too long to care about gossip, but what I didn't expect was how the scandal gave birth to new villains. People I had never met. People with new names, new faces, and dangerous intentions. It started on a Monday morning. I was kneading dough in the bakery. The sweet smell of cinnamon in the air when the doorbell chimed. A tall woman walked in, sharp features, high cheekbones, her hair a sleek black bob. She wore a navy suit, the kind you didn't buy at discount stores. Her heels clacked on the tiles like a judge's gavel. "Mrs. Roberts?" she asked. I cleaned flour from my hands. "Yes." "I'm Vanessa Cole," she said, sliding a card onto the counter. "I represent the Pembroke Law Group." The moment she said the word law, my heartbeat shifted, not racing, not panicking, just bracing. "What can I help you with?" I asked calmly. "It's about your former daughter-in-law," she replied. Carefully adjusting her glasses, Allison. Even her name felt like vinegar on my tongue. I didn't respond. Vanessa continued. "She has filed an intent to pursue legal action." I blinked slowly. Legal action. For what? Vanessa clasped her hands. Emotional damage, personal injury, public humiliation, and defamation. A dry laugh escaped me. She and Julian glued themselves together in my son's house, and I defamed them. Vanessa lifted her chin. She claims you set them up, that you orchestrated the fire, that you intentionally caused physical injury. I stared at her, trying to see if there was any hint of sympathy. There wasn't. Her eyes were cold, professional. Like a surgeon who cut bodies open without caring what bled out. I could have died in that fire. I said, "You weren't home," she replied flatly. That sentence told me everything. This woman wasn't here for justice. She was here for money, for power, for reputation, but then she added something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. She's not doing this alone. Vanessa leaned slightly forward. She has a financial backer. A backer. I repeated, yes. A man named Preston Ward. The name was unfamiliar, but the way she said it quiet, deliberate made my stomach tighten. He's wealthy, she continued, powerful, and very invested in this case. I folded my arms. Why? That, she said softly, is what you should be worried about. Vanessa turned and walked toward the door, her heels echoing like a metronome counting down to a disaster. Before she left, she said one final thing. Expect to hear from us again. Mrs. Roberts, this is only the beginning. The door closed behind her, and the smell of cinnamon suddenly felt bitter. I stood frozen, staring at the card she left on my counter. Vanessa Cole, Pembroke Law Group, Preston Ward, none of these names belonged to my past, but they were now shaping my future as if Julian and Allison weren't enough, as if betrayal had more branches to grow. But I wasn't the same Juliet anymore. I had learned how to fight back, and this time, the enemy wasn't inside my home, it was knocking on my front door. Asterisk, I didn't touch Vanessa's card for the rest of the day. It just lay there on the counter like a dead insect, ugly, unmoving, and irritating to look at. Customers came and went, ordering sweetbread, flan, and cinnamon pastries, but my mind wasn't in the bakery anymore. It was circling around a single, unfamiliar name, Preston Ward. Even saying it in my head felt like pronouncing something dangerous. That night, after closing the bakery, I sat at the kitchen table of my small apartment above the shop. Daniel had gone to a late shift at the fire station, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stared at the steam rising from my cup of chamomile tea, wishing it could calm the storm inside me. Instead, a knock echoed at my door. 3 taps. Slow, confident. I tensed immediately. No one knocked like that in this neighborhood. People here tapped fast, frantic, and patient. But this was practiced, purposeful. I opened the door just enough to see through the chain. A man stood there, tall, broad shoulders. Dark gray suit, perfectly tailored. Salt and pepper, beard trimmed razor sharp. Eyes dark and steady, like he was used to staring people down until they broke. "Mrs. Roberts," he said, voice deep, smooth, and chillingly calm. "May I speak with you?" I tightened my grip on the door. "Who are you?" His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Preston Ward." Ice spread through my chest. He continued. "I believe you met my attorney, today, Miss Cole. I thought it best I speak to you myself." I didn't open the door wider. If anything, I pushed it closer. "What do you want?" I asked. He clasped his hands behind his back. "Clarity and cooperation." "On what?" He exhaled softly, like this was all very inconvenient for him. "Allison is under my protection now," he said, "and she is very distressed by what happened. I intend to see that she receives justice." My jaw clenched. Justice. She cheated on my son with her own father-in-law. She destroyed our family. She planned to take my bakery, my life's work, and now she wants to sue me. He nodded calmly, as if hearing I'd baked cookies, not survived betrayal. "Yes," he said, "because she believes you orchestrated the unfortunate situation, that you intentionally sabotaged her life." I almost laughed. Her life. What about mine? That, he said softly, is no concern of mine. The way he said it, so casual, so dismissive, felt like someone had pressed a cold knife to the back of my neck. Then he added something that made my blood run cold. Allison is staying at one of my properties now, under my care, under my roof. His eyes narrowed ever so slightly. And when I protect someone, Mrs. Roberts, I do so thoroughly. I stared at him. The pieces didn't fit. Why would a powerful man take in someone like Allison? Why fight her battles? Why risk his career and reputation for her? Unless there was something else, something deeper, something ugly. I swallowed. Why are you helping her? His expression barely shifted, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. Let's just say, he replied, I owe her family a debt, and I always pay my debts. That answer wasn't an answer. Before I could speak, he held up a manila envelope. Inside were documents, thick stacks. He tapped the envelope lightly. This contains a proposed settlement. Sign it, and we can avoid court, avoid scandal, avoid complications. If, I repeated, he tilted his head. I'm sure a woman like you understands consequences. Anger shot through my chest. I'm not signing anything, I snapped. His smile returned cold, calculated and cruel. I thought you might say that, he murmured. But consider this. Allison is fragile, emotional, hurt. And people who are hurt can become unpredictable. He stepped closer to the door, lowering his voice. Accidents happen. Mrs. Roberts, fires, break-ins, harassment, none of which I would ever order, of course. He paused, but I have no control over the enthusiasm of certain people loyal to me. My breath caught. This wasn't a legal threat. It was a warning, a promise, a declaration of war. Before I could reply, he stepped back and straightened his suit. You have 1 week, he said politely. Then we proceed. He gave me a slight nod like a king dismissing a servant, and walked away. I shut the door, locked it, and slid to the floor, my heart pounding like a drum. I had thought Julian and Allison were the worst of my problems. But their betrayal had awakened something far worse. Preston. Ward. A man who didn't fight fair. A man who didn't fight clean. A man who had just declared himself my enemy.